here, and I'm going to be teaching you today. Today is going to be about advantage. This is going to be the first video in hopefully a long-running series, hopefully weekly, we'll see. Without further ado, let's jump right in. First I'm going to talk about card advantage, which is just the general advantage of card for card, etc., etc. Let's start with basic one-for-ones. We got MST and Smashing Ground. They're the most basic removal cards in the game right now. MST is a one-for-one. You just take out their back row, and Smashing Ground is a one-for-one where you take out their monster. You trade a card in your hand for a card on the field, and trade a card in the hand for the card on the field. Usually. One-for-ones are one-for-ones. They're always good. They just simplify the game state, and simplifying the game state is usually going to make a faster game. Talking about field advantage with the Smashing Ground, next we're going to talk about some broken field advantage cards, like Yugioh Guardian. Obviously you know he's banned, but for good reason, because when he kills a monster by battle, which is kind of a +1 anyways, you activate his effect to get a free +1 by stealing that monster back to your side of the field in defense mode, which is pretty ridiculous, because it's for free, so yeah, he lets you herp derp, as we would say. Then we have Royal Oppression, which is recently banned. It is a continuous trap card, so even when you activate it, you don't lose a card, so once this dies, you lose the card, but you might have gotten off 3, 4, 5 activations of it, or even just one is fine, because you pay 800 life points, and you get a summon, which is pretty ridiculous since you know someone who's played pretty much everything. So decks that can play Royal Oppression obviously have a massive advantage because you can use it to either maintain your field advantage or stop your opponent from gaining massive advantage on you by stopping those explosive plays. Next we have Blackluster Soldier, probably the king of all monsters. Easily special summoned. So easy. His effect lets you instantly +1 by dropping him from your hand to the field, so that's one-for-one. Virtually no cost to summon him. You guys just have to meet a lame condition that's so easy. And then you activate his effect to remove the one, so you now have a card on the field, and they lost one, so that is a +1. And you gain some relative advantage by removing it from play instead of sending it to the graveyard, but I'll talk about more of that later. Other than that, he's just a ridiculous card. Next we're going to move on to hand advantage, which I mentioned earlier. We're going to start with Pot of Avarice, which is recently limited. This is a ridiculous card. It is a watered-down version of one of the best cards in the game, ever. It is a +1 by meeting a fairly easy condition. You use the one card in your hand to activate it, and then its effect resolves. You all know what it does. If not, you can just look it up. You then draw 2, so you use one card in your hand for 2, so that is a +1. Then we have Graceful Charity. You gain no advantage by playing this and resolving it. However, it does gain you some potential advantage by thinning your deck, drawing the right cards, discarding the cards you don't need or don't want at the time, or just dead cards that you can't use in your hand. It's a ridiculous card. Draw 3, it's probably the biggest draw power card in the game. So, and then we have Pot of Greed, the absolute king of them all. It is free +1. You don't have to meet a condition, you don't have to do anything. You draw this, you play it, you pick up another card, or you get 2 more cards. So that's it for hand advantage. Hand advantage is very important in the game, especially right now with Heavy Storm legal and the changes to the ban list. People are holding more cards in their hand because they aren't really sure of what to do, more or less. Hand advantage is safer than field advantage because field advantage is susceptible to things like MST or Smashing Ground. basic removal can get rid of things on the field, whereas there's very few cards to hit cards in the hand, which allows hand advantage to be far more powerful than field advantage. So think about your hand advantage. I mean, try and keep it as healthy and high as possible. If you're not keeping your hand advantage, you might want to take a look at your deck and try and maintain more hand advantage. Next, we're going to move on to some relative advantage, which I was talking about earlier. Cards that don't gain you any advantage at all, however, they have the potential to win you the game by themselves. Power Duality. Played, probably overplayed, honestly, and definitely due to the recent reprint. This card gains you no advantage at all because you play it and you get another card in your hand, so it's just a 1-for-1. However, you're searching through your deck, which allows you to pick and choose the card you want, so you're getting the card you want sooner. Instead of drawing through those 3 cards that you're revealing off the top, you are picking the perfect one off of them, but sacrificing your special summon for that turn. But usually you're going to be playing this first, second, third turn, where you're not going to be special summoning all that much anyways. So, card's ridiculous, as everyone knows. Then we have Book of Moon. This card was overplayed a lot earlier when it was at 3 because it was stopping synchro summons. This card gains you no advantage on the field and actually -1s you because your opponent loses nothing, except it flips a monster face down, which isn't really any big deal when you think about it. I mean, there's normal spell cards that do the same thing and they aren't used at all. But the fact that this thing is a quick play lets you do so many things with it. It lets you stop synchro summons, stop exceed summons. It's basically a toolbox in one card. When you draw this, you are ready for many, many answers that your opponent might have to your current field. So it just lets you maintain your current advantage, or it lets you stop your opponent from gaining a ton of advantage on you just with one card. So that's why it's so ridiculous and why it's not limited. Next is Foolish Burial. This is probably the biggest one of the 3, simply because, like Book of Moon, it is a -1. However, it lets you search your entire deck for any monster and send it to the graveyard. And if you've had any experience with the current meta, there are many, many cards that get cards from the graveyard, so either to your hand or to the field or whatever. There's just lots of ways to retrieve things from the graveyard. So Foolish Burial gets it there faster and gives you some potential advantage, which I will talk about next. It gives you some graveyard advantage, excuse me. I'll talk about graveyard advantage here with Plague Spreader, Dandelion, and Glow Bulb. These are the most heavily played graveyard advantage cards. There's some deck-specific ones like Light Swarms, etc., but I'm just going to talk about these because they're easily splashable into almost any deck. Plague Spreader is arguably the least broken of these, simply because his own effect is a 1-for-1 where you're using a card in your hand to the top of the deck, so you've lost that card in your card advantage, your hand and field, to special summon him from the graveyard, so that is a 1-for-1, and then you can use him for future synchro summons and things like that. Say you foolish him, so you lost the card, you gain no direct advantage off of foolishing him, but you then activate his effect for the 1-for-1 and then you synchro to possibly plus. That is potential advantage. You are using cards now to gain cards later. In a nutshell, that's what it is. Anyways, I digress. Say you foolish Dandelion, that is a different situation, where you gain direct advantage right away by foolishing Dandelion. You search out that limited card from your deck, and then his own effect will activate as soon as he hits the graveyard, and you'll get those 2 tokens on the field for a +1, where you now use that 1 card in your hand to get 2 cards on the field, so +1. +1s are nice, they're pretty broken as every experienced player knows. We also have Glow Bulb, arguably the king of them all, even though Dandelion has that +1, Glow Bulb is more or less better. You can foolish Glow Bulb to the graveyard. That's a -1. You gain nothing from that, more or less. You can then activate Global effect to send the top card of your deck to the graveyard for a +1. So you've now evened out. However, Global can be used for so many synchro summons since he's a 1/2 tuner. He's incredibly flexible. He just can gain you a ridiculous amount of advantage off of synchroing for him, or synchroing with him. And off of his own mill effect, you can actually gain more advantage by milling cards like Dandelion for a +2. So you've now turned a -1 into a +3. So you've gone +2, because you now have the 3 cards in the field from the 1 card in hand. That is all potential advantage, though. You're not guaranteed to get any of this. It's just a situation that could potentially happen. Anyways, that's more or less potential advantage. I can talk about it later if you guys need me to. Next, we're going to talk about something pretty obscure that no one really talks about or really thinks about at a competitive level, but it is there and you need to think about it to really become more of a competitive player and to become a successful competitive player if you're already a competitive player. That is life point advantage. 99% of the time, life points don't matter. It is a fact at competitive play. Life points do not matter 99% of the time. However, you have to think about your life point advantage as a percentage, not a card advantage where it's +1s, -2s. Simple math. Life point advantage is a percentage, and it's going to be multiplying and dividing. It's very complex to think about when you're activating Solemn Judgment or Solemn Warning, for example. You're paying lots and lots of life points to stop simple things like summons and spells and traps. However, these can single-handedly swing the game in your favor. That is why they are very, very heavily played. Solemn Judgment, for example, is always 50% of your life points, and that's always going to be a large cost, despite if you have 8,000, 10,000, 200, or, I don't know, 1,000,000 life points. It's always going to be 50%. Whereas Solemn Warning is a static cost of 2,000 at the beginning of the game. You have 8,000 life points, so pay 2,000, go down to 6,000. That's a fourth of your life points, which doesn't really feel like a whole lot. I mean, 2,000 life points really won't make a difference from 8,000 to 6,000, but later in the game, when you're at 2,500 or so, it'll really hurt when you're paying 90% of your life points to stop one summon. You have to keep in mind your life point advantage, even though it's typically not important. With more experience, you'll know when to abuse your life point advantage and when to conserve it. You don't warning every single chance you get, for example, and you don't judgment every single chance you get. You just have to pick and choose what you're going to hit. And if it goes off at the right time, fantastic. If it doesn't, it could lose you the game because you miscalculated. That's what I have to say on life point advantage. I mean, of course, I can talk later and longer and longer and longer, of course. But that's more or less advantage in a nutshell. I can talk about any one of these things for hours and hours and hours. They're very complex. One of the most complex things in the game, however, also one of the most simple and one of the most basic and necessary to know for you to be a competitive player. I think that's going to about do it for this episode. Leave comments in the section below if you want to hear about any of these in an extended video or anything, and I will catch you later. Thanks YouTube. See ya.